What's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope you all have had a great Tuesday. Hope you all are having a great start to your work week. Guys, there's a lot to talk about as it's looking likely that we're going to have a system develop and potentially affect the U.S. Early next week, around this time next week, actually. And this is something we need to break down, try to figure out, and talk about what we do know. There's also two other areas to talk about, and then there's going to be other areas that are going to need to be talked about later in the future as we get a little bit deeper into September. But for right now, we're going to focus the majority part of this video on this tropical wave right here, which will soon be named Invest 99L. This is something we need to figure out, and there's a lot to discuss. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go through all the model runs. We're going to talk about the GFS, the European, even talk about the Icon, the Canadian models, and we're also going to break down what factors is at play here as far as what steering it, how strong it can get, who it could potentially impact as far as the U.S. I'm talking about Texas, definitely, parts of Louisiana potentially, and just talk about what's at play. We got to figure this out because we got about probably under a week to figure this out, and I'm really starting to grow concerned that this could eventually affect the U.S. So if you guys have not subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button. Your support is definitely appreciated. Like the video, and like I said, I'm just a guy who's very passionate about the weather. Love talking about what I love, and I'm blessed enough to have a platform to do that with. And thanks to all y'all. So thank y'all for the incredible support. I'm also a storm chaser, so I try to get out there and chase the storms also. Also, if you guys got anything I can pray about, definitely put it in the comments so we can all pray for you. And thank you all for the people who pray for me in my situation with my daughter. She's gonna be okay. She doesn't have COVID, but there's a lot of other kids out there that do, and that breaks my heart as a father. So let's get going here because there's a lot to talk about. Right now, you got 97L, which will likely develop. In fact, I have a feeling that this may end up being Ida, and this will end up being Julian. This is Invest 98L. This will probably not end up developing, but there's more tropical waves to worry about on down the road. But we're going to focus on this tropical wave right here and how it's going to interact and kind of consolidate and get mixed up with something we call Central American gyre. And it's basically just a bunch of disturbances that can sometimes form together and get over waters and really form into a tropical system. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. So let's get going here. Look at the latest National Hurricane Center update from 2 p.m. This is going to update here at 8 p.m. They might increase this one. They might increase this one. They might decrease this one. But it just looks like it just looks very active out there. You got a 60% chance of this develop in the next 5 days. And I really think the model guidance on this has actually went down a little bit, but this is really going to develop in something that potentially can interact with the jet stream up here and enhance it. And this could become a hurricane up here and just not really bother anybody. I really don't think this is going to develop in anything. Even if it did, I think it's going to go out to sea too, just with the steering currents and it bay out here. But let's get going because this is one that we need to worry about, I really think, on down the road. So, like I said, going to go over the GFS, the Ensembles, the European, the Ensembles, even take a look at the Icon, the Canadian, and then please stick around for what steers this, because when you look at these models, I don't want y'all to just look at it and say, oh, man, we're going to get slammed by a hurricane. These are just operational runs. So don't look at these and say, oh, yep, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's not how this works. You got operational runs, and the main thing to focus on is the Ensembles, because that has several different members put together to create a mean and trying to figure out what the storm could possibly be. So, and I ask y'all to potentially maybe stick around towards that latter half of the video so you can know actually what steers this and some scenarios that could really happen. Just my personal opinion on this. So, thank y'all for the support. I can't mention that enough. My YouTube has definitely grown a lot over the last month and a half, so I really appreciate it. So, let's take a look at the latest GFS. This is the 18Z, the evening run. Look at this wave right here that really pops off, gets enhanced, and really gets going here and forms right here. Check it out, it gets going, but we're not going to talk about that much. What you need to watch here is you back it up here as you get into about Friday. This is when this system can really start getting going here. And I'm going to talk about vortices. There's going to be two pieces of energy, and whichever one, the more northerly or the southerly, becomes more dominant, really is going to be the telltale factor on what ends up happening down the road as far as into the weekend and early next week. We're looking at the run right now. The latest GFS likes this to become maybe a storm as early as Saturday. Hit the Yucatan Peninsula, get on It gets on back over into the Gulf of Mexico, and then you almost have nuclear conditions in the Gulf of Mexico, meaning there's not really much of anything preventing this from rapidly intensifying, and that's exactly what the latest GFS does. But it's one run, guys, and check it out here in the Gulf of Mexico. It quickly strengthens this into a hurricane as we get into Sunday, we get into Monday, and a very scary thing happens, almost kind of like Harvey. It begins to bog down, and it's because there's hardly no steering currents at play. It kind of gets lost in some weak ridging, and it really slows down, and this intensifies. If you were to take the GFS serious, it intensifies it into a major hurricane around this time next week and slams the Texas coast. Very, very scary scenario if this was to happen. Then, of course, you have more pieces of energy coming off North Africa, which we have to worry about. It's some very active times. I'm not trying to create hype, but it's a little worrisome because we've been talking about this what seems like months. And there's some favorable MJO phasing in Bay here that's promoting this system also in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. And there's just a lot of going on that could really be a threatening scenario down the road. So we look at the latest GFS ensembles. Remember, these are ensembles. And check it out. There's a stout signal here as we get into the weekend for a storm system. It gets even more stout and more pronounced as we get into late weekend to early next week. The scary thing about this is it is much more north on these ensembles. You look at the run just from the lunchtime run, which was the 12Z run. Back it up. See how it ticks south, deeper into the Gulf of Mexico? You go to the present run, look how more north it is. The more north it is, obviously, the more of an impactful scenario we're going to have to the lower 48. You even go, you go to the 06Z run, which was the morning GFS run. It's even more south. And then the run prior to that, six about the same. But the last few runs has ticked north big time. And that's because this is trending into a potentially stronger storm medium term, which means it's going to, like I said in the video last night, which means it has a higher chance of this going more northwest as opposed to kind of more west into Mexico. So this is a strong signal. And this isn't just a strong signal for a tropical system. This is a pretty strong system for a hurricane for Texas. Things could change. It's only Tuesday, but this is a pretty stout signal this far out. I mean, this is 120 to 150 hours out. Pretty strong signal, but that is also a lot of time for things to change. You look at the latest European run. The latest European run was actually, the storm itself was a little bit weaker, but it actually went even more north. And it actually, European run, as you get into Sunday morning, has the piece of energy getting to the Gulf of Mexico and quickly strengthening it into maybe a tropical storm, a low-end hurricane, and then hitting kind of where Hurricane Laura hit in Louisiana as we get into Monday evening, Monday morning, whenever. The timing on this thing is going to be back and forth because if this gets in the Gulf of Mexico and really slows down, then we might have maybe a midweek scenario next week. We got a lot to figure out. We really do, guys. But you look at the latest European ensembles. Here he goes. Here's that big signal popping up here as we get into Friday. Then all those circles, a lot of them now are going right into Texas. And you notice the ones that are, you see the little red circles, those are basically lower millibar low pressures, as you can look at the graph up here, which I know is kind of hard to see on your screen. But that shows a threatening scenario ensemble-wise, which is something we really look at this range to Texas and even some areas going into Louisiana. And some of those are some strong hurricanes, guys. I do want to take a peek at the icon because, it's model guidance, especially this far out. It shows the same thing, and the latest icon only goes 120 hours out, so it's not going to show the whole life of the storm. I want to mention that this could potentially not be Ida. This could be Julian. Ida could form out here, but both of these systems are going to be fighting for the name Ida. But either way, it's likely, very likely, that you'll either have an Ida or Julian. And going forward here, it quickly organizes the storm as we get into Friday. This is the system right here. It interacts, or potentially it doesn't. That would be even scarier if it actually doesn't interact with any land and actually squeezes itself between West Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. That means it doesn't interact with land at all. And then it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, quickly strengthening to a hurricane. At this point, it's either a strong tropical storm or a hurricane in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico and bathtub-like water conditions, sea surface temperatures, and heading what looks like to Texas as we get into Sunday evening. You look at the Canadian. The Canadian shows, from what I remember, we're about to find out, almost the same path as the Icon. It gets this system right here, gets it into the Gulf of Mexico, and strengthens it into about a Category 2 hurricane as it makes landfall in Texas. These things are loving Texas today. I'm telling you, you guys in Texas need to watch out. But it ain't just Texas. If these models, they can keep taking north, guys, and I'm going to tell you why, in Louisiana, who knows, even further east in the areas of the Gulf of Mexico, need to keep your eye on this. And this is what we need to watch. There's a monsoon trough kind of down here chilling that's going to kind of enhance this CAG, which is Central American gyre. There's a lot of vortices, basically pieces of energy that tries to pop up down here. You got a piece of energy right here, right here, right here. And as you get into Friday, these pieces of energy try to become the more dominant one. So you have this main piece of energy and this piece of energy. Basically, the more northern, if the more northern piece of energy becomes the dominant, that's when you have a more threatening scenario down the road. Because what that means that you're going to have a stronger storm up here. It's going to not plow itself into Central America. If it was a more southerly vortice, which if we back to the previous GFS run, look how the more southerly vortice becomes dominant. You look at the one previous to that, and it's still the more southerly vortice piece of energy, and the one to that, and basically this is trended north. Even though at this rate, as you get into Saturday morning, you still have two pieces. But eventually, either way, they kind of consolidate and really want to make the northerly piece of energy, whether they meet down the road or wherever. And this gets into the Gulf of Mexico, and there really isn't nothing stopping this from really exploding. And obviously, when you get a hurricane, you get just obviously one main piece of energy. You look at the upper level conditions, wind conditions here, and 200 millibar wind streams, and basically you get something called a ULAC, which stands for upper level anticyclone, which kind of spins the opposite way as the tropical system. And if you notice this little area right here, this actually helps to ventilate the system. It almost causes its own outflow boundaries and really helps to ventilate this system. So moving forward here, this really would help to limit any kind of shear. Now, a big thing I haven't mentioned is how broad this system is. The more broad it is in the early cycle of its life right here, the more longer it's going to take to develop in the medium to long term. So it's really got to consolidate and really get itself together here. And so we have to watch how broad this system's going to be here between, obviously between about Thursday into the weekend. And then after that, we kind of have to figure out what happens as we get into the Gulf of Mexico. Will this kind of consolidate into a tight system? What's going to happen here? This is going to be kind of ventilating itself. There's going to be the sea surface temperatures in this area are going to be very, very favorable for rapid intensification. One thing I want to mention here is the ridging of high pressure. This is very, very interesting as far as steering currents, because you get this system on the latest GFS. It gets here. You get into the Gulf of Mexico, and there is ridging in place. There's a particularly more stronger ridging over the southeast, which, by the way, is probably going to keep us warm through the rest of August. Unfortunately for us in the southeast, we're still going to be very hot. No cold fronts in sight, really. But you see this system, it's trying to plow its way into some weak ridging of high pressure. The stronger the storm, and I've mentioned this many times in tropical videos talking about the tropics, the stronger the storm, the more it can plow itself deeper into weak ridging. A weaker storm is going to get influenced more by any kind of ridging. So if we keep getting a stronger scenario, I think the trend northwest, I'm sorry, not northwest, but the trend more north is going to continue. I'm not saying this is going to trend so north that it's going to hit Florida to the point where it's just moving due north, to the point where it's moving east. But the stronger the storm, the more it can plow itself into ridging. Now, it looks like the ridge weakens altogether. If that happens, then it's going to either tug this way or this way. But, yeah, that's a scary-looking storm on the operational run. It definitely is. And I will mention that the sea surface temperatures, listen, there's nothing stopping this system, I'm telling you. It really isn't. I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of something, whether it's just a little bit of dry air out there, whether it's a little bit of shear But there's nothing really stopping this as far as sea surface temperature wise, because temperatures in mid to upper 80s in some parts of the Gulf of Mexico from exploding, especially in this area, because it looks like, not by a lot, but on average, it looks like the western Gulf of Mexico is much warmer, much warmer. Not much warmer, but decently warmer than the eastern Gulf of Mexico, because there really hasn't been a lot of disturbances to really upwell the water or anything. But we need to watch this, guys. Texas, I really think y'all are going to get some kind of tropical system next week, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's just a tropical storm, whether it's just tropical moisture, not sure. But this could also, way on down the road, affect other areas of the U.S. as maybe the energy gets pulled back east. You know how tropical systems do. A lot of times they like to make landfall then curl back this way. So, not the hype, but we need to be aware. And there's going to be a lot to talk about over the next week and maybe the next couple months. But thank y'all for tuning in. That's all I got. Hope y'all have a blessed evening, and thank y'all for the amazing support.